The Nudge app is a mobile application designed using a human-centered design approach. It's a mobile application aimed at empowering citizens of digital communities to better understand and control how social networks impact their mental health. This app will integrate with the most popular social networking apps and employ pattern recognition and user surveying to customize an experience to each user. The concept of this app is grounded in my belief that digital communities can benefit our mental health, but only under particular circumstances. Spending too much time on social media, experiencing cyberbullying, and negative emotional contagion of content shared through social networks all threaten users' well-being. The Nudge app will be built to recognize these and similar threats, and will combine this foundation with survey data that is designed to better understand a particular user's reactions to different triggers. The app prototype was designed using the 5-step design thinking process created and promoted by the Interaction Design Foundation. It's important to note that this process is an iterative and non-linear approach. So we start with the discovery stage. I found 3 key points helpful in narrowing the focus for the Nudge app. 1, social media users are subject to emotional contagion. This means that the content that we see on social networks, whether it comes from our friends, from brands, from people we don't know at all, that content can have an impact on our emotional state after we leave the platform. 2, using social networks can take a toll on both physical and mental health. As highlighted by Fast Company in early 2019, a study was able to find that time spent on Facebook made people feel lonely, depressed, lowered self-esteem, and increased social anxiety under certain circumstances. And 3, we know that there is a market for products that help us regulate our digital hygiene and our self-care. Apps already in this market include Screen Time by Apple, Digital Wellbeing by Google, Woebot, Cyana, and more. In his book, Hooked, Nur Eyal introduces this quote: "When harnessed correctly, technology can enhance lives through healthful behaviors that improve our relationships, make us smarter, and increase productivity. Social platforms should be no exception. However, right now, they certainly are." So next we define the problem. Social media usage is on the rise across the globe. Social networking platforms hook their users, monetizing their data through advertisements. While social media can help us build helpful, informative digital communities, overuse or abuse of these platforms takes a toll on users' mental health. We cannot rely on the platforms to solve this issue. However, we can take advantage of the growing trends of personal health and self-care routines to step in. As I continued to define the problem that the Nudge app would solve, I elected to complete a survey using Instagram. This ensured that the users that were answering the survey questions were familiar enough with social apps and using them enough to really be kind of considered the target audience here. So the average sample size for each question was 80 participants. In question 1, I asked, have you ever attempted to limit the amount of time you've spent on social media in order to improve your mood or mental health? 82% of respondents said yes. In question 2, have you or do you currently use a tool or app such as Screen Time on Apple to help you monitor time spent on social media? Only 38% of respondents said yes. Question 3, on average, how does using social media impact your mood? Users were asked to rank on a scale of usually worsens my mood, doesn't change my mood, or neutral, to usually improves my mood. The poll results showed that the average answer was between negative and neutral. And question 4, how likely would you be to share your social media usage data with an app designed to improve the impact social media has on your mental health? Again, users were asked to rank their likelihood on a poll or scale from very unlikely to very likely. Average results were about 70% of the way to very likely. About 7 out of 10 people are very likely to share that data. So from the survey and from some secondary research, I was able to conclude users are generally aware of a relationship between social media usage and their mental health. 82% have attempted to limit the time spent, and one user added some additional context that I found helpful. She stated that she's tried many tactics to limit social media usage to make more time for personal, real-life connections spent with her husband, child, or dogs, and or to leave time for herself to work out, all of which she knows will positively impact her headspace. Users are still adopting tools that help monitor usage patterns, such as screen time. 62% have not yet adopted this or similar tools, meaning that this concept may be a bit more foreign to them than expected. Social media usage has a negative neutral impact on users' moods, as is self-reported, and roughly 70% of users would be willing to share their data with an app like the Nudge app. This brings us to the idea testing stage. As I ideated how this concept and app could come to life, I moved to some user testing and remote surveying with a group of friends and family. So in order to do this, I created an initial prototype. I shared this prototype with friends and family through their mobile devices. They accessed it through Marvel app, and clicked through and experienced the content on their own. I did my best to get a diverse group of users as far as age and social media usage. So we range from heavy social media usage to minimal. We have age ranges from 18 to 54 and an even split of male and female participants. The first user, Beth, stated that she really appreciated the tone of the language used, which was consistently noted across the user testing. The content feels like an important part of our society's relationship with social networking, which kind of validates and gives a proof of concept. Something I would use and recommend for sure, she says. The only critique is that the text could be larger and less gray in the color scheme. Tester number 2, John, also offered a proof of concept. He says the core design worked well for him, and then he offered a few thoughts that could kind of level the app up. First, the daily assessment of emotions that a user is feeling could be broadened. 2, he was wondering if the dashboard feature could kind of pull in global metrics rather than just self-reported, which is an interesting thought and really kind of ties in that integration to other social networks, which would be a large opportunity for future use of the Nudge app. And 3, he agrees with Beth, maybe use color-coded tile backgrounds to enhance glanceability. Font contrast was also a problem for John. Eric offered a lot of feedback. He liked that the app was easy to navigate, clean and clear, as he says. He's curious about how the mood tracking works, which was certainly a pattern that I noticed. He wouldn't want the notifications to be coming from the app too often, which was an important piece of feedback. He likes the tip of the day idea and suggests that the ideas include things that you could do outside of the app or off of your phone, like taking a walk or calling a friend. Next, we have feedback from Gabriel. He says the app is simple and intuitive, which validates the navigation again. The available mood choices seem fairly broad compared to the complexity of how social media makes us feel, which does come in conflict with feedback from John. So would have to look into that a little bit further and employ some further user testing as far as which emotional stages we want to offer in the assessment. Next is Kaylee, who reports that she would like to see more color within the app, yet she likes the idea of it. She finds the dashboard easy to interpret and view. and says that she would use this app because it does more than the screen time app and taps into mental health. And finally, feedback from Amy, who states that she really loves the friendly and comforting language. So great to see that the voice and tone of the app overall is validated by several users. So to summarize the feedback from friends and family, I took the following steps first. I decided to increase the contrast of the text within the prototype and included more color overall. I got good reviews of app navigation, so I didn't change that. And then I do want to consider the options for the emotional scale within the assessment since I got conflicting feedback there. I got some great ideas for feature enhancements that just don't seem like a fit for phase 1 to me. These include incorporation of global data that does not include personally identifiable information, expanded options for the nudge notifications, and then daily tips that are inclusive of non-digital coping mechanisms like taking a walk or calling a friend. And then to round out the ideate and idea testing stages, I brought in the consideration of the UX honeycomb, which we see here documented by UX Collective. So thinking through how users think, feel, and use the app and kind of bringing those elements into the prototype helped me refine the full experience before it was time for more formal user testing. In the content creation stage, the prototype originally created within Marvel app was transferred to a high fidelity prototype in order to add in the following app architecture. So the journey was from the sign up page to introduction features. Users then selected either the exit journey or the get started journey. And within the get started journey, they completed an initial assessment. They were introduced to their dashboard and they were able to check out the tip of the day. So next we go through some of those different prototype screens. First up is the introduction features. So here the design theory and principles that kind of guided this creative process include that the copy adopts a tone that comforts the user and builds trust. It's written within the first person, kind of personifying the app as the caretaker. Ample white space in the design leaves room for the user to digest the complex information. We're talking about mental health, we're talking about privacy, so it's really important that the user understands that they need to pay attention to this information in order to understand how the app experience will work. And lastly, the information architecture on the final or third screen prioritizes forward motion with the Get Started button in the contrast and larger, but it also allows the user the opportunity to opt out if they want to. Next, the exit journey. If a user does click on the No Thanks button, it's important that they know that their data won't be stored within the app, especially since this relies on data integration with other social networks. That transparency is really important to me. However, the tone remains consistent while still being informative. If the user does choose to continue, they begin the Get Started journey. So here we see that explainer copy is included in light gray below most of the headings to give added context where it's needed. The button labels are simple and informative, and users can navigate back to My Dashboard at any time by clicking on the app logo, which is always present in the header. So to get the full experience of this portion, I'd really encourage you to check out the prototype within Marvel app, which is linked in the lower left-hand corner. Next, we look at extra features. The first of those is the ongoing assessment. So every user will take an initial assessment to kind of establish benchmarks within the app, but then there's also the option to complete an assessment at any time. Demonstrating the social app integration is difficult at this stage because the Nudge app will work with other platforms like Instagram or Twitter. So this feature was kind of created within the prototype to help explain some of the data collection process. I employed iconography, as you'll see with the check mark. It's used to differentiate the assessment feature. And then the confirmation screen, or the third screen, represents the variable reward stage of NeurEOL's hooked model, representing a reward of the self, kind of validating the user for making the best choice for themselves. And lastly, in the prototype is the tip of the day. The option to share my tip enhances peer-to-peer interactions. So this could invite more users to the app by just introducing it through established networks. Users will be asked to opt in to receive a nudge or a push notification each time that they receive their tip of the day. So, as we saw in the initial user testing, users don't want to receive too many push notifications. It can be seen as spammy. So this kind of regular cadence of opting in would be pretty unique to this app, and I think a feature that would really differentiate the experience. And then lastly, navigation to my dashboard remains clear and omnipresent. You can click on the logo or click on the Return to My Dashboard button to get there. So with this prototype finalized, I began user testing, and further remote user testing was conducted via usertesting.com. The first participant was a male 30-year-old US resident. The full recording can be found in the link. This user was frustrated that the mood metric was difficult to understand for him. He would have improved the app by offering more options for the nudge settings. However, he was likely to use this app, giving that an 8 out of 10, and was also likely to recommend the app, another 8 out of 10. The second user testing participant was also a male, 20-year-old US resident. He didn't find the app frustrating and did not recommend any immediate improvements. The app was somewhat applicable to his lifestyle. He gave it a 7 out of 10 as likely to use, but he was very likely to recommend it, 10 out of 10. I was able to kind of collect their feedback into some clear next steps. So both participants really breezed through the introduction features that explain the app's functionality and how the mood scoring and surveying works. And then both expressed that they were confused about how data collection and scoring would work. So I think that I could solve that by adding more intrigue to the introduction features, perhaps by utilizing gamified content that kind of quizzes users as they read through. Second, users understood the functionality of the nudge feature and noted that it would be useful. So that came through pretty strongly in both tests, which was great to see. I would choose to highlight this feature when promoting the app or introducing new users to it, since their feedback really validated that that was going to be useful to them. And then inadvertently, both users validated the name of the app itself by referring to nudge throughout their feedback. So they kind of began to adopt that verb. And my next step there would be to trademark the name and to reserve the social media handles. 2 quotes that I found helpful. I could see it being useful if someone really is addicted to Twitter, and then after 5 minutes needs a nudge to get off Twitter, and it will help them. Then I'm all for it. They'll try and delete the app, but then look for the opportunity to download it again. I think this nudge feature could be helpful to use. Oh, I know what this is. It's showing social media's interaction on your mental health. That's kind of interesting. As I reflected on the outcomes of the test and the prototype, I found it useful that I adopted the human-centered design approach for 2 main reasons. First, the research phase really helped to inform the app features. This could really be a broad-reaching project, so getting that focus was very helpful. I learned that users were less familiar with screen time and kind of that full concept than I had anticipated. Through the friend and family testing, I was able to establish a desire for different options within the emotional assessment, and this also opened the whole process up to more diverse points of view than those that I could just come up with on my own, which ultimately improved the app's design and functionality. And also taking an empathetic approach enhanced the project focus as well. The initial empathize and define stages helped better define the problem that the Nudge app aims to solve. And I see plenty of opportunities for growth, but the initial prototype really required a limited set of features in order to reach proof of concept. Looking ahead, I found it useful to complete the SWOT analysis of the prototype. So as far as strengths, I see that there's a strong indication of user interest all around. The initial brand and tone seems to resonate with users, everything from the body copy within the app prototype itself to the name. Weaknesses, I could see accessibility becoming an issue. This is an experience that's really founded on improving mental health, so it will be vital that we provide accessible, safe content for all. Opportunities, we already know that Google, Apple, etc. are signaling their interest in technology like this. There's a definite opportunity for the implementation of artificial intelligence, such as Watson, for pattern recognition and sentiment analysis. Watson is already used within some social media analysis tools, such as Crimson Hexagon, so it's not too much of a leap to imagine a tool like the Nudge app using that functionality as well. And I see an opportunity to monetize the app through non-government organizational partnerships. A similar approach is taken by Crisis Text Line, who has found a way to package and anonymize their data and sell that data back as kind of conglomerate patterns to health organizations in order to better understand mental health crises. And lastly, threats. There is a foundational lack of understanding or recognition once users are in the prototype. They're confused about how the data collection works, and getting them to pay attention to the introduction feature will really be key to changing that pattern. And lastly, as we're seeing across the sphere of social platforms today, the platform must remain ad-free in order to serve the best interests and the mental health of its users. That completes my presentation. Thanks for listening, and you can find me with any questions you may have at nespears@loyola.edu.